Have you ever been called by your bank and told to come in because your account was empty, and you had no idea what was going on? Have you ever trusted someone so much that your trust was turned into a weapon against you? My name is Daniel Rivera, and this is how my two childhood best friends stole everything I had, $500,000, and left me bankrupt, broken, and angry enough to burn the world. It's been 2 years now. I've healed a bit. I sleep better. But when I talk about it, you can still hear the hurt in my voice. I grew up in a small town north of Chicago. Not a rich place, just quiet, brick houses, the smell of cut grass, the sound of trains at night. When I was 12, I met Jace Carter and Marcus Reed. We built tree forts, rode bikes until the streetlights came on, and swore we'd never betray one another. Back then, we talked about becoming men who made something big, something honest. I believed that for a long time. By 28 I had done it, or thought I had. I'd built a small business refurbishing old hardware and selling parts online. It was humble, but it grew. I hired Jace first. He was good with people, smooth talker, knew how to make a sale sound like a promise. Marcus came next. He understood numbers better than I did. He said, "Let me handle the books, Danny. You keep dreaming." And I did. We worked out of a narrow warehouse that smelled like metal dust and cheap coffee. At night we'd grab takeout, laugh about the future, talk about buying a house near the lake. They were my brothers. That's what made it easy for me to sign the papers they slid across the desk, just standard partnership stuff, Jay said. I didn't read them carefully. Why would I? They were family. The call came 6 months later. A woman from the bank, polite voice, asked me to come in to discuss irregularities. When I sat down, she turned her monitor toward me. My business account, $0. Savings, $0. Another account I didn't even know existed, $500,000 in withdrawals. My chest went hollow. I asked if there'd been a hack. She said, "No, Mr. Rivera. The transfers were authorized." My name was on the forms, forged so perfectly that for a second I wondered if I had signed them drunk in my sleep. I called Jace. No answer. I called Marcus. He picked up. I asked, "What's going on?" He said, "Dan, relax. It's just movement for taxes." I said, $500,000? He hung up. That was the moment everything tilted. I drove to the office. Locks had been changed. Through the glass I saw new workers packing boxes. My logo was gone from the wall. A sign read Carter Reed Industries. They had even taken my name. I pounded on the door until a guard threatened to call the cops. That night I slept in my truck. I told myself it had to be a mistake. Friends don't do that. But deep down I knew it was no mistake at all. Days turned into weeks. Lawyers wanted retainers I couldn't afford. Police said it was a civil matter. The bank shrugged, everything looked legal. My apartment went next. I sold my furniture. I sold the truck. One morning I walked into a pawn shop to trade my grandfather's watch, the one he wore in the factory for 30 years, for 2 weeks of groceries. That hurt more than anything. People stopped calling. Some thought I was guilty. Others didn't want to pick sides. I learned that when you fall, the crowd around you thins fast. I crashed on a friend's couch for a bit, then a cheap motel. Every night I stared at the ceiling and replayed every laugh, every handshake, every, "I got you, bro." The anger was a storm that never stopped. But storms don't last forever. When you run out of tears, what's left is silence, and in silence, plans start to form. I told myself, if they could steal from me, they could make mistakes. And mistakes can be found. I started working odd jobs, anything that paid cash. Washing dishes. Fixing bikes. Carrying boxes at night for a grocery warehouse. During the day I lived at the library. I read books about business law, accounting, and fraud cases. Words like shell company, asset tracing, wire fraud. Each one was a new weapon I didn't know I could hold. One evening a woman from the catering place down the street offered me a job loading trucks. Her name was Lisa. She had eyes that could tell if you were lying. She saw the tired in mine and said nothing. After my shift she handed me a sandwich and said, "You look like someone trying to fix something." That sentence stayed with me. Weeks turned into months. I saved every dollar in an envelope under the motel mattress. I didn't go out. I didn't drink. All I did was work and read. Then one rainy afternoon I went through an old folder I'd kept from the business. Inside was a stack of invoices and one crumpled email printout. It read, "Move the funds through Stockton before the 12th. There was a routing number. Stockton wasn't a person I knew, it was a small regional bank. That single clue was like a spark. I traced it using free tools at the library. I followed public filings. Found a company registered to an address that didn't exist, a virtual mailbox. The listed contact email ended with @cartereatinvest.com. They hadn't even bothered to hide the arrogance. That night, for the first time in months, I smiled. The next week I went to a bar near the docks where I knew Jay sometimes drank. I sat at the counter nursing a cheap beer. And there he was, new leather jacket, gold watch, laughing with a woman half his age. He looked rich, untouchable. When he saw me, he froze. For a moment his smile cracked. He came over, all smooth again. "Dan. You look rough, man. You okay?" My blood boiled. "You took everything from me," I said quietly. He laughed, actually laughed. "Come on. You always overreact. Business is business." I stood up. The chair scraped loud. People turned. He leaned closer and whispered, "You shouldn't show your face around here. You're bad for my reputation." My fist moved before my brain did. One punch, hard, fast, years of betrayal behind it. He fell back, hit the floor. The room gasped. His friends rushed between us. Someone grabbed me by the collar. I didn't fight back. I just stood there, shaking, breathing heavy. Blood from his lip hit the floor like a signature. Police came later. I spent a night in a cell, charged with assault. The next morning, they let me go with a fine. Stupid move? Maybe. But that punch reminded me I was still alive. After that night, something changed. Jace filed a small restraining order. But he also started to panic. The reporter I'd quietly contacted, Mara Gibbs, had published a short online piece about financial irregularities among two local entrepreneurs. No names yet, just shadows. Enough to make investors nervous. Marcus called me from an unknown number a few days later. "Dan, stop whatever you're doing," he said. "You don't know who you're messing with." I said, "I know exactly who I'm messing with." He hung up. That was when I realized, fear works both ways. After that call from Marcus, the world went strangely quiet. No more texts. No more threats. Just silence, the kind that tells you the other side is thinking hard. Lisa noticed the change in me. "You walk lighter," she said one morning as we unloaded crates. "Maybe," I said. "I think I finally see a way out of this." She smiled, but it wasn't the happy kind. "Just make sure your way out doesn't put you right back in." I wanted to promise her it wouldn't. But revenge doesn't work like that. It's a dark road you take with your headlights off, hoping the turns remember you. Mara and I met in a diner that smelled like burnt coffee. She was older, calm, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. I gave her everything I had, bank statements, the fake invoices, the forged signatures. After an hour she said, "You're not crazy. You were robbed. They left a trail, and trails can be followed. I felt something I hadn't in months, validation. She explained that if we could prove they'd laundered the money through shell companies, it could open a criminal case. But you'll have to be patient, she warned. These things take time. Patience. That was one thing I had learned in the ashes. I kept working, saving, staying quiet. Meanwhile, Mara kept digging. Every week she'd call with small updates. Found another transfer. Tracked down a vendor that doesn't exist. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to look like a picture again. At night I'd lie in bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, imagining Jace and Marcus sweating in their glass office, watching everything slip. Sometimes I'd feel bad. Then I'd remember the watch I sold, and the guilt would fade. One afternoon Mara said, "There's something you should see." She sent me a file. Inside were photos of a new property, a huge lake house under Jace's sister's name, bought the same week my company collapsed. The down payment was exactly the amount that disappeared from my main account. I printed the photo and pinned it above the motel desk. It became my morning prayer and my nightly lullaby. Lisa kept me grounded. On my birthday she handed me a cupcake with one candle and said, "Make a wish." I said, "It already came true." "They're finally scared." She shook her head. "Then wish for something better. Fear doesn't last. Peace does." Her words would echo later, but back then I wasn't ready for peace. I was just getting started. Mara's article hit the papers 3 weeks later, front page of the local business section. It named names, Jace Carter and Marcus Reed, accused of defrauding investors and embezzling from their former partner, Daniel Rivera. It wasn't proof yet, but it was enough to ignite everything. Calls poured into the state attorney's office. Suppliers wanted answers. Customers asked for refunds. The perfect walls of Carter Reed Industries began to crack. I sat in the diner with a coffee and watched Jace's face appear on the TV behind the counter. He was cornered by reporters, trying to smile. The crawl text beneath him read, "Local entrepreneurs under investigation for fraud." I raised my cup in a silent toast. But revenge doesn't move in straight lines. When you push, the world pushes back. A week later, 2 men in suits came to the catering lot asking for me. They said they were from Carter Reed's legal department. Lisa told them I wasn't there. That night I found my motel door kicked in. Nothing stolen, just a message. I didn't go to the police. Instead, I bought a cheap camera and started recording everything, license plates, faces, dates. If they wanted to scare me, I'd make sure they left fingerprints on the fear. One evening, I caught Marcus alone outside a gym. He looked thinner, nervous, glancing around like a man expecting ghosts. I walked up behind him and said, "Funny seeing you without your lawyer." He jumped. "Dan, man, listen, Jace handled all of that." I didn't even. I cut him off. "You forged my name." He didn't deny it. He just looked down. "I was stupid," he whispered. "Jace said you'd get your cut eventually." "Eventually?" I said. "You stole my life." He tried to step away. I grabbed his arm. "Look at me. If you fix this now, maybe you'll still have a future." He shook free. "You don't get it, Dan. He's not going down alone. If you keep this up, you'll wish you hadn't." He got in his car and sped off. That night I wrote everything down, every word, every threat, and sent it to Mara. "Keep it safe," I told her. "If anything happens to me, make it public." Weeks blurred together. The investigation grew teeth. Federal agents began asking questions. Carter Reed's accounts were frozen. I saw Jace once more, from a distance, being led into an office by 2 men in dark jackets. No cuffs yet, but close. And for the first time since all this began, I felt lighter. Lisa and I sat by the river one evening. Sunset reflected off the water like liquid fire. She said, "So what will you do when it's over?" I thought for a long time before answering. Maybe buy another watch. Maybe start over. She smiled. Start over sounds good. That night I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, "We can make a deal." Attached was a single photo, Jace in his office, holding a pistol, looking straight into the camera. No message, no explanation. It wasn't fear that filled me, it was exhaustion. I forwarded it to Mara and wrote, "If he wants a deal, he can talk to the feds." Then I turned off my phone and slept through the night for the first time in 2 years. The next morning, news broke. Carter Reed Industries executives arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud investigation. The photo showed Jace and Marcus in handcuffs. I sat on the motel bed, the TV flickering blue across the room. I should have felt victory. Instead I just felt empty. $500,000 gone. 2 best friends lost. Years wasted chasing ghosts. But sometimes emptiness is the first step toward peace. That was the fall. The long, brutal drop from trust to betrayal. Everything that came next, the investigation, the trial, the reckoning, was the climb back up. And if you stick with me, I'll tell you how I took back more than money. I took back their freedom. 2 years ago I thought the arrests would be the end. Turns out, they were just the middle. You don't walk out of a war without scars, even when you win it. After Jace and Marcus were taken in, the papers called me the whistleblower. People who had avoided me suddenly wanted interviews. The same neighbors who once crossed the street to stay away now waved like nothing had happened. It felt fake. Fame built on pain always does. I rented a tiny apartment over a hardware store. No view, just the hum of a soda machine outside my window. At night I'd listen to it buzz and try to believe I was really free. But revenge doesn't hand out peace, it hands out paperwork. Court dragged on. Hearings, postponements, more hearings. Each time I saw them sitting at the defense table in their tailored suits, something twisted in my gut. They didn't look like criminals, they looked like my memories wearing masks. The prosecutor warned me, "Keep your cool, Daniel. The defense will try to paint you as angry, unstable." He wasn't wrong. I was angry. I was unstable. But I bit my tongue till it bled. Lisa came to the first hearing. She sat behind me, hands folded. When the judge read the charges, wire fraud, embezzlement, falsifying documents, she leaned forward and whispered, "Breathe." I didn't realize I'd stopped. Between hearings I worked at the catering company again. It wasn't about money anymore, it was about rhythm. Loading trays, sweeping floors, it kept my hands busy so my head wouldn't explode. Sometimes, when deliveries ran near the old warehouse, I'd see the new sign they'd put up after the raid. Property seized by the United States government. It was ugly, metal, and perfect. Still, nights were rough. I'd wake from dreams where Jace and Marcus were kids again, laughing, saying it was all a joke. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, whispering, "Not anymore." Mara kept in touch. "The feds are building a bigger case," she said. Turns out they pulled the same trick on 2 investors in Denver. That made me smile. I wasn't the only one, and soon the pattern would crush them. She wanted to write a book. I told her no. Not yet. Let them rot first. Months passed. Jace's lawyer tried to cut a deal, blame Marcus, plead guilty to a smaller charge. Marcus did the same thing in reverse. 2 snakes biting each other's tails. The judge denied both and set a joint trial. When it started, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, cameras, people hungry for drama. I sat in the front row, hands clasped, pretending I wasn't shaking. The defense painted me as jealous, said I'd mismanaged the company, that Jace and Marcus rescued it by moving the money. Then the prosecutor put the forged documents on the screen, side by side with my real signature. Even the jury gasped at how exact the fake was. I looked at Marcus, his face turned gray. He wouldn't meet my eyes. During a break, Jace brushed past me in the hallway and muttered, "You think you won? You just gave them both our lives." For a second I saw fear there, real fear, and it tasted better than champagne. But revenge always asks for change you didn't expect. Later that week, Lisa's car was keyed outside her job. Nothing stolen. Just a deep line down the side, like a warning. I told her I'd handle it. She said, "Daniel, handling it is what got you here. Let the system work." I tried to believe her. After 3 months, the verdict came back, guilty on all counts. 15 years each, plus restitution. $500,000 owed to me. People clapped. Reporters shouted questions. I walked out into the sunlight and felt hollow again. The money would come slowly, if it ever came. The victory didn't bring back the time, the trust, the watch I pawned. All it gave me was quiet. Lisa and I drove to the lake that weekend. We sat on the hood of her car and watched the ripples catch the sunset. She said, "So this is it? Story over?" I laughed softly. Stories don't end. They just stop being told for a while. She looked at me. "Then tell the next one about something worth keeping." I nodded. "Maybe I will." For a long time we didn't speak. The world was finally still enough to hear the water lapping at the rocks. Over the next months I rebuilt piece by piece. I fixed up broken laptops and resold them online, back to where I started, but this time alone. Mara's book came out eventually. She changed some names, but not mine. The title was The Price of Trust. She sent me the first copy with a note, "You paid in full." I put it on a shelf I built myself. Sometimes I walk past the county jail. From the street you can see the windows, tiny squares of glass and shadow. I never look up long, just enough to remember that freedom tastes best when it's earned. People ask if I forgive them. The truth? Some days yes, some days no. Forgiveness is heavy, I carry it when I can. If you've been betrayed, here's what I learned. Revenge feels like justice until it's done. Then it just feels like silence. But in that silence, if you listen close, you can hear something else starting, yourself. That's where I am now. 2 years later. Lighter, but not untouched. The scars don't fade, they just stop bleeding. And every morning, when I check my watch, the new one, I think of the old one, and of the 2 boys who once promised we'd never betray each other. They broke that promise. I broke the chain. And that, my friend, is how I lost everything, and took back more than they ever owned, including their freedom. When the trial started, it felt like a long, cold room that would never end. The judge's chair looked big. The jury looked tired. The cameras made the room feel hot even when it was not. I sat in the front row. Lisa sat behind me. Mara sat near the back with a pen and a pile of notes. My hands were steady. My heart was not. The defense tried to make me look like the bad man. They showed pictures of me sleeping on couches. They showed the motel receipts. They asked why I had not taken the money back the first time. They painted me as someone who wanted revenge more than justice. "Is it true you punched Mr. Carter at a bar?" the lawyer asked me in front of the jury. "Yes," I said. They smiled like that small answer would make everything else false. It did not. When it was my turn to speak, I told the truth. I told them about the bank call. I told them about waking up and seeing my accounts empty. I told them about the watch I sold and the truck I lost. I told them how it felt to sleep on a motel bed far from home. I told them in short sentences. I told them like I tell you now. Not to sound like a hero, but to be clear. The jury listened. The prosecutor brought in papers. Big papers. They showed how the money moved. Not in a straight line, but in a snake path through small companies, through names that did not match real people. They had phone records. They had emails with the fake addresses. They had a bank officer who testified that the signatures were forged. Marcus sat with his head down the whole time. Once he looked up and his eyes met mine. They were not the eyes I knew. They were tired. The defense tried one trick after another. They said I had reasons to lie. They said I wanted the money to myself. In a way they were right. I wanted the money. I wanted my life back. But I also wanted them to answer for what they did. On the 5th week, a small man in plain clothes walked up to the stand. He was an accountant who used to work with Marcus. He said he had seen transactions move to companies that had no employees. He said the invoices were copies of fake work. He said he signed things he now regretted. A slow sound went through the room. It was like a wind under a door. People looked at each other. The judge asked the jury to go to the room and think. Then the room filled with the small noise of people shifting in chairs. I stood near the window and breathed. The sun was clean. Outside, the city moved on like nothing had happened. When the verdict came, I felt like the world leaned forward. The foreman read the words out loud. Guilty. The judge's hand came down. Marcus and Jace's faces were white. The judge set the sentencing day later. We all left the room. Reporters crowded near the doors. Flashing lights. People shouted questions. I walked away with Lisa's hand in mine. She did not say much. She did not need to. The weight on my chest was there, but it was different. It was not only anger anymore. It was a tired relief. In the days after, things changed fast. Assets were frozen. A list of properties and cars and accounts became public. Some money made its way back to the bank. The bank sent me a letter with a number that made my hands shake. It was not everything, but it was something. One morning a man from the bank called and said, "We are putting a hold on certain assets. The prosecution is arranging for restitution." I asked him how long. He said, "These things move slow. But they move." I learned to be patient again. I had no choice. There were ugly parts too. Jace's wife cried in front of cameras and said she had no idea. Marcus's son's school had questions. Kids whispered in hallways. I saw Marcus in court once when his son was there. He looked broken in a way the law could not fix. People asked me if I felt guilty about their pain. I thought about that a lot. The truth is, I felt two kinds of pain at once. I felt the pain of the man who had been stolen from. I also felt the pain that they had put on their families. Pain grows when you let it. I was not perfect. I had my hot nights. There were times I wanted to smash their windows or throw rocks at their cars. I did not do those things. I left the mess to the law more than I left to myself. But I did not stop watching. I sat in court. I watched them sign papers. I watched them lose doors. One night after court, a man in a heavy coat came to the small diner I was at. He slid into the booth across from me and did not say his name. He said, "You did good." He had a voice like gravel. He wanted nothing. He left a card. On it was a number for a law office. He had been a private investigator who had worked quietly for the feds. He said, "Keep records. Don't throw anything away. They will come for you." He meant the defense. The defense did fight back. They called witnesses who said the transfers were for legitimate loans. They hired a man who said numbers could mean anything. But each witness stumbled when the paper trail was put next to the fake invoices. There was a day when I climbed a ladder in the one-room shop I was renting. I painted a sign with my name on it. It was small. It was crooked. It read Rivera Tools and Books. I wanted a place where my hands could work and my head could be quiet. I wanted to be someone who fixed things, not only in a business sense, but in a life sense. People still judged me in town. Some said I was lucky. Some said I had been foolish to trust them. A few said I had taken too much time to act. I did not argue. My mouth had been taught by too many broken things. Time in court was cold. Time in jail was colder. The sentence was not what I hoped for on the day. 15 years sounded like a number that would never roll into the present. But a judge can reduce when someone makes deals. In the end, Jace and Marcus were given different times. Jace got longer. Marcus got less because he cooperated a little. The law is a chess game. Sometimes a piece moves to save another piece. They were taken away in cuffs that shined like a metal band. I watched their faces. They looked small. For a moment I thought of the 3 boys we used to be. I thought about the tree in the park where we carved our initials. I felt a sharp twist in my chest. I had the urge to run to them and ask why. Instead I turned and walked away. There was nothing left to say on that day. The restitution came in fits. The bank sent checks in parts. Some money went to vendors who had been hurt. Some went to me. When I opened the first check, my hands shook like a leaf. It was not the whole amount. It would not fix everything. But it meant I could pay off a debt, a few small bills, and give Lisa a gift that was not just words. The community was quiet for a while. But then small things started to happen. Old friends began to come back. People said sorry. Some were proud. Some were shy. I did not know how to take their hands at first. My trust had holes in it like a net. There were costs I had not seen. The night I punched Jace came back to me often. The police took my statement. I paid a fine. I had to do community service. I scrubbed graffiti at the subway under an old fluorescent light. The cleaning felt good. Scrubbing is a small kind of penance. Lisa stayed. She was the one who brought a box of new paint when I opened the shop. She came every morning to make coffee and keep the register until I could. Her belief in me had a weight that felt real. I did not know how to deserve it. Sometimes clients would come in who looked at me like I had done something wrong. Once a man came in and asked where Jace was. I told him, he's not selling parts anymore. The man nodded and left without a word. I started to take on small carpentry jobs. I fixed chairs at the library. I made a shelf for Mrs. Ortiz down the street. Her smile was worth more than any check. People began to trust me with things that mattered to them. The bad parts did not end. Every now and then someone would yell at me when they saw Jace in a photo. A man who used to buy tools from me walked by and spat on the ground. I felt the hot blood of anger climb my throat, but I did not answer. I had learned the cost of fury the hard way. Marcus was released earlier than Jace. He came to the door of the shop one gray day. He looked like he had slept poorly. We stood on opposite sides of the glass. "Daniel," he said. His voice was thin. "Can we talk?" I unlocked the door and let him in. He sat in a cheap chair. He looked at the old books on the shelf, fingers trailing on the spines. He said, "I thought I could make it right." I tried to warn him and he stopped. He folded his hands. "You took my life," I said simply. He looked down. "I know. I'm sorry." The word was small and heavy. I told him what I had learned about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a free blanket you give people. I said. It is a small thing you give when you see a different life. He nodded. He asked me for work. He wanted to fix things. I thought about the past. I thought about how he had lied, how he had made signatures that were not his. I also thought of the hard nights he would face. In the end I hired him part-time, sweeping floors. It was small. It was not trust. It was work. Working with him was a kind of medicine. He was slow and awkward at first. Once he broke a shelf and cried. I told him to learn from it. We both did. Jace stayed away. He had more time to sit in his house and think. A neighbor told me he sold the lake house to pay fines. He lived in a small apartment now. He did not walk in the street where I walked. One night I found a note on the counter of the shop. It read, "You did what you had to do." No name. Just words. I pinned it to the wall. It stayed there for months. The trial had taken my energy. It had taken hours I would never get back. It had also taken something else, my blind belief in people. That belief had been a gift. I had given it away, and it had been used as a weapon. Now I gave it slowly, like bread to someone who had been hungry for too long. Months turned into a year. I painted the shop twice. I learned how to balance the books again. Small money, slow money, but mine. I repaired a lawn mower for Mr. Ortega and he brought me tamales for a week. Little trades like that built a new life. On the second winter after the arrests, a man stopped by with his son. The boy looked at the shelf of old comics and asked about them. We talked about small things, baseball cards, heroes, the way the sun looked on a late summer night. The boy asked if I had ever wanted to be a firefighter when I was small. I said I wanted to fix things. He smiled. Being part of a life like that felt like a light you could not blow out. It warmed me in a place I had not known would feel cold. I learned to sleep without waking each hour. I learned to put my hand on someone's shoulder and mean it. I learned to let the past be a teacher instead of a blade. People asked if I would write more about it. Mara still called sometimes. People like stories with blood, she said. They stay. She wanted me on a podcast. I said no. I did not want my story to be a thing people used for a thrill. I wanted it to be a warning. 2 years after the first bank call, I walked past the old warehouse. There was a chain-link fence, and beyond it a new business with a new sign. For a second I felt old anger, a hot coil in my chest. Then I walked on. At night, I sit in the back of the shop and look at the small things, tools with worn handles, a photograph of my mother smiling with the old watch on her wrist. The watch is back. I found it in a police storage room when the case closed. It had a scuff on the face, but it was mine. Sometimes I dream. I dream the three of us are on the porch of that old house where we grew up. We are young. We are laughing. We have no scars. I wake up and rub my eyes. The dream is small and sharp. It reminds me of what we had, and why I had to act. People ask if I'm happy. I think about that. Happiness is not one thing. It is a small knot of things. A warm cup of coffee in the morning. A clean register. The sound of a child laughing. A person who will stand in the rain with you because you need them there. Do I want revenge to be my whole life? No. I want the story to have been told so it can be done. I do not want to keep the hurt alive for strangers to watch. Sometimes I still see Jace in my dreams. In them he looks younger. I ask him why. He says he thought he was owed. He thought the world would give him everything. He did not see that trust is not a debt to be collected. It is a gift. The last line of the judge's order is a legal thing with numbers and dates. But the last line in my head is simpler. It is the sound of a hammer on wood, the click of a register closing, the quiet of a shop after the last customer leaves. That quiet is my reward. So listen to me when I say this, be careful who you give the keys to. Hold them close. Check the locks. But if something is taken, know this, paper can be followed, lies can be broken, and the law can move. It moves slow, but it moves. I did not get everything back. I do not get back the days I missed, the calls I did not answer, the trust one gave away. But I got my peace in pieces. Little pieces. I put them on a shelf and look at them now and then to remind myself I survived. If you are listening and you are hurting, know this: anger is a tool and a trap. Use it to build a plan. Use it to find help. Let people who know how to fight the parts you do not. And when the storm is over, do the small thing: wash a dish, fix a chair, plant a seed. These small things will stitch you back in. My name is Daniel Rivera. I lost $500,000. I got some of it back. I lost friends. I found myself again. The wound is still there. It is part of me. It will always be. But I am not a man who lives in the wound. I run a small shop. I sell honest tools and old books. Sometimes a man will come in and ask if I am the one from the papers. I will say yes. I will tell him a short piece of truth. Trust, I will say. Give it to those who earn it. Keep your keys close. And then I will hand him the hammer he needs.